just joining us, I've got LaTia Jacquise here, and I am making her answer all of my and your questions about DMing and adventure design. So, you've told us all about DMing by the seat of your pants, and learning in different styles from working in a highly structured adventurers league to starting to write your own things to completely homebrewing to running long book adventures, and figuring out what you most enjoyed. But of course, one side of that a lot of us, even if we've been playing for years, haven't touched yet, is the idea of I'm going to make something up and then I'm going to set it down for someone else to use it. So, for instance, the mini adventures that you wrote for Wildmount for D&D Beyond, which have some links probably running through chat right now, those are what was it like to approach that style of storytelling, which is both the same as being a DM and I feel like completely different?
Yeah, it was excuse me. Water break. Everybody drink some water.
Yeah, hydrate. I'm actually going to do that.
um, it was fun. I had only ever written one or two things before I was approached by D&D Beyond to do this. And what I liked about it was that at the very at the very beginning of it, because the adventures that I wrote are taken directly from adventure hooks in Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. So um those are adventures that you can take and put in your own Wildmount campaign, or you can take that adventure hook and create something completely different. But I liked that at the very least what I had was a very a very small skeleton to work off with. It's very I am not the best at coming up with things like fully from my mind. If I have some kind of prompt, I'm better that way. Um, but what was the question again?
I was just curious how that was different from the work of building your own stories as a DM when other people are going to read and
Oh,
use them.
yes, yes, yes. Yes, you are more considerate of things like game mechanics and combat. Like you're more focused like when I'm DMing for the rivals, it's not that I don't care what I'm doing, because I do care. I care very much about, giving them a good game, but it's a lot different when other people are going to take those adventures and run them as well. So you're more considerate of theme and of atmosphere and just adventure. Like you want to come up with something that you feel that people are going to very much enjoy inserting into their campaigns.
Because you aren't necessarily going to be putting it across yourself and adding your own flavor at every step. So you want to make sure it stands on
Hmm.
its own without needing you as the charismatic
Absolutely.
DM to put it across.
Absolutely.
I love that. What advice would you have for folks, whether they are homebrewing to use in their games or publishing for other folks? How do you start? It sounds like if you can find a prompt or use something as a prompt to kickstart that process, maybe that's a good beginning.
That is a very good beginning. Everybody has seen something on TV or read something that they thought that would make a good D&D campaign, or you've watched a movie. Like most recently, I watched The Mummy and The Mummy 2 with a friend of mine. And the whole movie, because they're my favorite movies and I've seen them so many times, the whole movie we're talking about what events in the movie are the result of good or bad roles, or talking about character classes and ascribing character classes to the characters. Um Everybody has seen something that they thought would make a good D&D adventure. And I say start there. Um Nothing is new anymore, and the world is ripe for the respectful taking of ideas. So start there. You saw The Mummy and you want to do an archaeological dig gone wrong, go for it.
It gives you ideas like, here are some things that can go wrong along the way. Here's some things you could
Mhm,
find. Here's where you can see some great examples of we think we're going this way, but actually there's a left turn because something's been
mhm,
stolen and now we have to get it back. Uh,
mhm.
and you can take those, and those are sort of setting neutral. You could graft those into a lot of situations. Uh,
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
how has your approach to putting together those adventures changed over time, or hasn't?
Um, it really hasn't. Um, the best time for me to I kind of think of the best time for me to get the best idea of what the adventure is gonna look like for me is right at the beginning when I'm fresh-minded and looking at it for the very first time. Um, I think Cackles in the Dark, the first adventure I did about the hags. That one because I love hags. Hags are my one of my favorite D&D creatures, and they're so misunderstood. More love to hags, please. Um, that one, I knew kind of I'm not gonna say immediately because that's absolutely not true, but I knew absolutely where I wanted to take that one just from the prompt. Um, and that one was probably the that one I wrote the quickest and was the easiest to write. Um, it's like when you read a prompt or you have an idea, it's never constructed in your mind beginning to end. You have an idea of this thing that you want to see in that adventure, and then the puzzle pieces kind of fit in around it. Like, okay, this adventure is going to end in the Hag's Lair. How have they gotten there? How long did it take them to get there? What did they encounter on the way? How did this adventure begin? So, you're kind of starting at one place and then working backward or working forward or working around. So, in a sense, that way my process hasn't much changed because I think about one thing that I really want to see and then work around that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Uh, for folks, and I believe we had someone directly asking, so I'm going to steal your phrasing. You will never know asks, any good resources to use or read for jumping into homebrew creation? Is it best to start with like a small village encounter?
Ooh, yes. Resources, I cannot give you anything off the direct top of that's a lie. Um, The Monsters Know What You're Doing by Keith Amon, is really good for, building your combat encounters, making smart combat decisions, because their GMs kind of get stuck into this rut where once combat begins, it's just players attack, enemies attack, players attack, enemies attack. And there's no, I'm not going to say there's no, but there's very little creativity on the part of the enemies. So that whole series of The Monsters Know What You're Doing, there's 3 books now, um, kind of gives you insight into how to run your monsters. But to get started, um, yeah, run a small village encounter or a 3-room dungeon crawl or whatever you can come up with, or, do the classic. You're stopped by bandits on the road, or you're adventuring and somebody runs into your path with a problem that they need you to solve. There's myriad ways to kind of start small if that's your preference. But if you're one of those like big thinkers, like you have started like I want to build a continent. That's also good. Like it really depends on where your brain wants to start, you know? But I'm a
Well,
big fan of I'm a big fan of like thinking small. Like if I have a continent, yes, that's great. I'm going to focus on one country. Then I'm going to focus on one city. And then I'm going to focus on like one house and then kind of like zooming in that way. I'm a
mm,
zoom inner as opposed to a zoomer outer.
I love that. So you could start with like, I know about this inn, it's in this village, in this valley, in this kingdom. Or you could be like, I got a kingdom, and then reverse yourself down into the like
Mhm.
the finding your focus in that way with
Mhm.
that in context.
Yep.
Rannoch X asks, how do you deal with writer's block when penning an adventure?
I cry. No, I mean, sometimes I do.
That's valid.
So valid. No, if I'm dealing with writer's block, then I've been thinking too long about the thing that I am writing. So what I do is I will either leave my computer and I will go do something else, or I will pick a different part of the manuscript and start there instead. Because writer's block, partially to me, is this is not what you want to be writing about. Like, I'm writing about one thing, but what's in my mind is a different part of the piece, or you've been staring at this for 2 hours, go play a video game. Um, Finding a different thing to do is going to reset your brain and probably get you unstuck from whatever it was that you were having the writer's block about. Um, or picking something else will get your mind off of that thing that has got you stuck. And when all of that doesn't work, I just go to bed. Take a nap.
I
I'm a
love
big
that.
fan of naps.
It's a little mental reload.
Mhm.
Uh,
I saw a TikTok recently about video gamers who have been working on a boss for so long, or a particular part of a video game for so long, and they're just done with it. They can't get past it. They can't get through it. They go to bed, and then in the morning, you're dealing with a cold controller. You're dealing with a fresh brain, and it is not as difficult as it was the night before.
that's a fantastic piece of advice. Mhm. Let's see. Any tips, asked Etid13, for pacing out rewards and treasures throughout the campaign? How much is too much or not
Ooh.
enough?
Um, I yes, yes. So at the very start, give treasure all the time. That's my rule about it. um, so should treasure should feel like it was, especially like bigger treasures. Treasures should definitely feel like it was earned. But at the same time, D&D campaigns are so devoid of fun stuff like gold and treasure. I'm not going to say all of them, but it's it's so common to feel that after the big dungeon crawl, we get the treasure. After we save the thing, we get the treasure. And I don't like that because
Mm.
I am trained to know that once we've done a big thing, something is coming. And um I feel that you should reward your players more. Um in a game that I am a player in, we beat a particularly, it wasn't even particularly difficult group of enemies, but we had come upon a scene where a rather large creature had just been, had been defeated, but there were casualties, and we had to fight some demons, and we had just come across these demons. And after we'd beaten them and just kind of gotten a feel for what had happened in this very gruesome fight, my character got a bow that can, negate demon damage because that was a difficult part of the fight. So it wasn't anything grand or, super special. It was just you did a hard thing, a somewhat hard thing. You did it, and now you've kind of reaped this reward. Um, but I am a big fan of giving treasure all the time. So,
I
which
love
everybody will
that.
find out come Sunday.
KPL here asks, do you have tips for outlining writing up an adventure? I have a narrative version, but I'm not sure how to adapt it into an adventure version.
Ooh, yes, sort of. Um, so in your narrative, you have a pretty good idea, I'm sure, of where your story beats kind of change. Um, there, I think, kind of separating it into those, I'm going to call them scene changes. Separating your narrative into those scene changes where your narrative begins, setting the stage and things like that. Picking those parts of the narrative where you're kind of shifting focus to something else in I'm gonna pick a town for example. You've set the stage. Your opening is, introducing the town, and you know you're kind of shifting to the town hall or the inn or whatever, and that is a good place to create a break to describe that and to talk about what's going on there, who may be there, and who may have something for the player characters to do. Um, Start there, and I think things may kind of start to make a little bit more sense once you've separated that um into those various parts. When I write, I'm already writing in those parts. So that's kind of something that I've already thought about. Um, Although I have never actually written a narrative version of anything that I have turned into an adventure. So maybe I will start to do that. So that's a really good thank you for that.
No, that's wonderful. So you can find the transition points, and that's a good point, the place to ask yourself, okay, what are the options here? And that'll start to widen
Hmm.
out your sort of like, here's some ways it could go. And then you turn a linear thing into a field for story. I
Yep,
love that.
absolutely.
Um, let's see. Curio. When writing for the Wild Mount Adventures, how did you anticipate the background information, stats and combat, etc., without losing the narrative focus of the story you create?
I'm gonna actually look at this question. So when writing, I know you just said it, but reading it helps me too.
Sure.
um, I I really think I thought about stats and combat first. Um, each of the plot hooks kind of gives you an idea of what the players are going to be dealing with. Uh, what the players are going. I'm sorry, I'm listening for the phone. Gives you an idea of what the players are going to be dealing with. So I kind of already know what the kind of what monsters I have to kind of deal with in the adventure, what I have to place there. Um, it's a matter then of figuring out how they fit into the narrative because they are kind of just a part of the narrative as, the setting and other mechanics and the players themselves. So kind of tailoring the narrative to work around the the stats and the combat and things like that. I think is kind of the way to go there. Excuse me, I have to send a text message real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. I am
You
checking
can still
on the
talk
results
though.
of we have a very interesting poll that y'all ran in chat, that I love this very much. A just a fun little opinion poll of what is the best tier. And
Yeah.
take it away, tier 2, was the victor
Yes.
in that one. Would you tend to
Um,
agree?
I I agree partially because that is really where people tend to play the most. Most
Mm,
adventures are written for 1 through 10 or, it's very kind of easy to start a character at level 5 and then kind of go from there. You don't see a lot of tier 3, tier 4 combat or tier 3, tier 4 adventures. So, people really go kind of go with what they know. And Curio, yes, less shoehorning, more weaving through and around.
I love that. Well, we will check back in with you on the tiers once you've gotten through a whole season of DMing tier 4 Rivals of
Yeah.
Waterdeep. Starting this Sunday, February 6th, I have one last question, which is a very important one from D&D Beyond.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite dinosaur?
I do actually. Oh no, you've said it and you've asked me this question and now they're all gone. My favorite dinosaurs are all of them.
I
Oh my
accept it.
goodness. No,
Valid answer.
yeah. I'm actually trying to think about this. What are my because I play a lot of Ark Survival Evolved. So big dinosaur fan there. I think oh no, I don't know. I'm gonna
Well,
go with
we
a
will.
Utyrannus. No, I'm gonna go with a
Ooh,
Utyrannus because they are just big. Like I know that everybody has opinions about what T Rexes looked like and things like that, but in Arc, Utyrannuses are like big furry Tyrannosaurus Rexes. So I'm gonna go with those.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing such great insights into DMing and adventure design.
Thank
Where can people
you.
find you for more of this?
More of this, you can find me across the internet at my name, which is LaTia Jacquise. I'm there Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, primarily on Twitter though. It's just you want an idea of what my brain looks like, just go to my Twitter. Just follow me on Twitter.
This has been a blast, and we will hope to talk to you again. And if you haven't,
Yeah.
please make sure you're checking out your copies of pre-ordering Critical Role Call of the Netherdeep from an incredible team,
Ooh.
including one, LaTia Jacquise. Thank you
Thank
so much, and we will
you.
see you next time on D&D Beyond.
Bye.
It's D&D